He was also angry that he wasn't offered tea. That's right. The prince was as lovely as ever, if I may say so, the strategist's assistant replied, his eyes glistening at the memory. He was another of Jinchi's victims. Someone might try to poison Jinchi, but Maomao didn't think Jinchi would try to poison anyone else. Maomao, how much poison are we likely to be talking about here? Lahan asked. There's no single answer. The effect depends on the poison. Some poisons cause the victim to seem better, only for the effects to return later and cause death. She glanced toward the sick room. The aide's face was pale. She added, I think he will be fine though. Lahan growled, your bedside manner leaves something to be desired. He placed the piece of paper on the table. Before visiting Jinchi, the strategist had been relaxing at an open-air pavilion in one of the palace gardens. The cool breezes and the flowing river made it one of his favorite spots. He had brought a snack, a steamed bun, and he was eating it. Wage thief, Maomao grumbled. This might be a good moment to not say everything we think, NN chided. Privately, Maomao was sure she agreed with her. The freak had arrived 30 minutes late for work that morning, truly the kind of privilege afforded only to the bosses. He had congee with sweet potato mixed in for breakfast and also a mooncake. It's all sweets, NN remarked. He's going to get diabetes, Maomao said. My honoured granduncle told him the same thing, Lahan replied. Incidentally, Maomao, do you have any ideas yet? He was looking closely at her. He would normally have turned to her father, but since he wasn't here, Lahan was left with no choice but Maomao. No doubt the attempted poisoning of a military official was a case they wanted solved as quickly as possible. She said, if there's anything left of the food he was eating, I might be able to figure something out. I'm afraid not, he replied. He ate all of it. The aide volunteered weakly once again. There are still a few sips of the juice he was drinking. Can you bring it here right away? Maomao asked. Yes, ma'am. The aide left the room and was soon back. It took him exactly as long as it took the boiled bandages to dry. Here it is, he said. He gave her a glass drinking vessel. It had a wooden stopper and was about 1/3 full of a pale liquid. The colour suggested grape juice, diluted with water to make it more drinkable. That's quite large, NN said, looking at the vessel with interest. It could not have been easy to carry it around all the time. However, since the freak always drank juice instead of water or tea, he probably needed it. I do not believe it is poison, the aide said. What makes you say that? Maomao asked, because I had some too. Anyway, I think it would be extremely difficult to slip poison into a container that never leaves his side. Then I guess we can ignore this, Lahan said, taking the bottle and placing it on the table. It is beautiful, isn't it? NN said. Not as beautiful as you, Lahan replied smoothly. Stupid Abacus face. He was no looker himself, but he never failed to chat up a pretty girl. He even only said thank you and smiled courteously. It was purely businesslike. It was patently obvious that she had no interest whatsoever in the tousle-haired man. Maomao meanwhile studied the glass bottle, observing the liquid inside. She cocked her head. This really is quite an impressive piece. I agree, ma'am. I believe Master Rikusen gave it to him. He is quite fond of it. Speaking of Master Rikusen, I haven't seen him lately. Whatever happened to him? This was the perfect chance to ask the question that had been on her mind. He went to the Western capital. This bottle was his parting gift to the strategist. I am his successor, and I must say he left big shoes to fill. The aide bowed his head. Lahan said you did know. She and Rikusen had both been in the Western capital only recently. And now he had gone back. The aide said, with Master Gyukyuan coming to the capital, he requested that someone knowledgeable about matters in the central regions be sent west in his place. Master Rikusen has gone to fulfill that request. Gyukyuan was the father of Empress Gyukayu. As father of the Empress, he might well be expected to come to the national centre. Maomao thought it seemed a bit sudden. However, she had heard that Empress Gyukayu's son, which meant Gyukyuan's grandson, and if things remained as they were, the future emperor would be formally presented soon. The crown prince's presentation would be a lavish affair. Even VIPs from other nations would be present, so Gyukyuan could hardly fail to attend. Even if he was the most powerful person in the Western capital, and even if it was a very long trip, he would come. Lahan said he insisted, and I'm afraid we were in no position to turn him down. And he was so useful. Lahan knew Rikusen well and was clearly distressed by his loss. The strategist's former aide could remember any face he saw, even just once. This certainly made him an excellent counterpart to the freak himself, who couldn't tell one face from another. NN probably could not follow even half of the conversation, but she was listening without much interest anyway. She appeared to be a very good lady in waiting. She knew how to be quiet when she needed to be. However, it was sometimes intimidating because it wasn't always clear how much of the conversation she understood. All right, let us return to the topic. As for who poisoned the strategist, Lahan said. Oh, I have already figured that out, Maomao said casually, her gaze still on the bottle. What? Exclaimed all three of the others at once. Well, who in the world was it? Lahan demanded, adjusting his glasses. The freak himself, Maomao replied. She tapped the bottle with her finger. It made a delicate ringing sound, and the juice inside moved. You are out of your mind. I believe I can say with certainty that my honored father would never attempt suicide. Even if he might make others do it. Awful, NN interrupted. Nonetheless, he placed it here himself right in this juice, Maomao said. Wait a second, it did not look like there was anything in it. Did he put something in there when I was not looking? The aide said. Oh, he put something in it, certainly. And he did it right in front of your eyes. Maomao pointed to the mouth of the bottle, which was closed with the wooden stopper. She asked, I know he always keeps his juice with him, but does he usually have a cup as well? No, he just drinks straight from the bottle. Did you do the same, drinking directly from it? Absolutely not. When I escorted him back to his mansion last night, we bought the juice on the way home. That is when he gave me some. People often bought drinks using their own containers. The strategist had probably washed an empty bottle and then had it filled with juice. So you bought this yesterday, correct? Yes, that is right. Now she was certain. The strategist had poisoned himself. So, what kind of poison did he use? If this is your idea of a joke, then let your dear big brother inform you that it has gone too far, Lahan said. Who is my big brother? Maomao growled, temporarily forgetting to be polite. She stole a look at NN, who was making an I knew it face. She must have been carefully examining Maomao. Maomao cleared her throat and regained her composure. It is the same poison we all carry, she said, pointing to her mouth. More specifically, she indicated what was inside it. Saliva, saliva. If the strategist was not drinking from a cup, then he was drinking directly from the bottle. Some of his saliva would get mixed back into the juice. What could possibly be poisonous about saliva? Lahan said. You know how if a dog bites your hand and you let it go untreated, your hand will swell up. It is the same thing. Canine and human saliva are not quite identical, but both can be poisonous. And if the poison had nutrients to feed on, it would multiply. If he is lounging around an open-air pavilion on a warm night, carrying that juice everywhere without ever cooling it down, then the poison inside is going to grow until it gets bad enough to be harmful. The glass bottle seemed likely to be especially good at retaining heat. Maomao had once used a goldfish bowl to focus the light of the sun, and she suspected this bottle could do something very similar. People know that fish will rot if you leave it out, but for some reason they never imagine that a drink might go bad in as little as half a day. But it does, and then you get a lot of trouble. Trouble, yes. Lahan crossed his arms, wondering how he was going to explain this one. Should we simply say he ate something he found lying around? It seems easier to believe, the aide said, sounding reluctant. His suggestion would certainly not help the strategist's authority. No, when it comes out that the contents of the bottle were poisoned, the situation will explain itself. Maomao, taste the juice for poison. I know that's your specialty, Lahan said. Absolutely not. Why not? Normally you can hardly stop yourself from sampling a poison. Because I'm not drinking from something that old man put his mouth on. Do you want to try it? Lahan didn't say anything for a moment, but his expression was one of utter comprehension. Finally he said, could you not be just a little kinder to him? He is still grieving, you know. I would not want it to go to his head, Maomao said flatly. The entire incident had been an all-around pain in the neck. Not long after, the medical officers returned. My goodness, really? Maomao's old man asked in exasperation when he heard the story. NN looked dejected. Yao was filling out paperwork about their purchases and would not be back for a while. The freak strategist had seemed basically fine, so Maomao had sent him home. She had him carted away while he was still asleep, lest he wake up and cause even more headaches. At least the medical officers were back. Now she found herself tasked with sorting and organizing the medicine they had bought. Maomao enjoyed the work, but she was awfully tired after the day's events. Talk about exhausting, NN said to her. Yeah, Maomao replied. NN had seemed unusually willing to talk to her that day, perhaps thanks to Yao's absence. She was fundamentally reticent and not very expressive, so she had never actually come after Maomao herself. Maomao realized now that NN didn't necessarily dislike her. It was simply that with Yao nearby, she likely didn't speak much for the same reason Maomao didn't. Talking can be a lot of trouble. She was probably very much like Maomao actually. I think I should apologize for some of what has happened so far, NN said as she organized some medicine in a drawer. What do you mean? Maomao said, the way I have been acting. I know I haven't been terribly nice to you. Regarding Lady Yao, I can only ask you to be generous with her. She was so sure she would begin this job as the top student, but here you are. Top student, hadn't you heard? The person who gets the best grade on the test is given a hairband of a slightly different color. Ah, Maomao remembered that her hairband alone had been a darker color. No, I hadn't heard. She had left the matter of her outfit entirely to Gaoshun. When he brought her a change of clothes, there had been too much badgering from the madam to leave time for explanations. She felt a little bad about it now, but she was also surprised. She had figured she had only barely passed the test. NN said, setting aside the general education portion of the test, getting even half the questions right is considered good when it comes to the specialized knowledge. General education. Did that refer to the history and poetry Maomao had choked down so unwillingly? She had wrung herself out for those questions. Oh, how she had worked. Lady Yao swore she got all of the general questions right. Therefore, she must have lost to Maomao in the specialized knowledge portion. I was confident my grade was as good as anyone else's too, so I admit that at first I wondered if you had been hired because of your family connections. Is that what this was all about? Maomao said. Her only regret was that if she had really done so well, it meant she could have afforded to study a little less. Not that it would have made much difference. From the moment she had been sold to the old lady, she had been left without a choice. I am an apothecary, you see. Yes, I know, you proved it today. But I don't think that will take the sting out of it for Lady Yao. Maomao could understand, and she didn't necessarily have a problem with people like that. She liked this much better than if Yao had tried to flatter her. It was easy for others to misinterpret her aloofness, though. Yao came from the best family of all the new court ladies, so the others felt they should follow her lead. She is not a bad person, NN said. I hope you won't hold this against her. NN's handling of the situation was quite adult. Maomao hadn't asked how old she was, but she suspected they were about the same age. NN added Lady Yao is just 15. She still has some growing up to do. Did you say 15? That made her 4 years younger than Maomao, yet her body was so developed. She's quite large for her age. Maomao didn't specify where. Yes, I've worked hard to help her grow, NN replied, sounding strangely proud of the fact. If she's just 15, then I guess I can hardly blame her, Maomao thought. Although she suspected that if she said out loud that Yao was still a bit childish, NN would get upset. All this still left one issue. NN was clearly Yao's attendant, but she was also quite intelligent. This was shown by the fact that she knew a little of the Western language, a language even Yao didn't speak. May I ask you something? Maomao said. Yes. What, if I hadn't been here, Lady Yao still wouldn't have been the top examinee, would she? You would have been. A fixed smile came over NN's face. As she was putting away the next medicine in the drawer, she said, such a thing would absolutely never have happened. Absolutely, huh? Cheating in order to raise one's grade was a problem, but deliberately missing questions you knew the answers to. That wasn't even cheating. NN was polite and careful, but Maomao saw she had to be alert around her. She was a very shrewd young woman. Chapter 7 Island's Intentions. About every 10 days, one of the physicians from outside, principally Maomao's father, would visit the rear palace. The system was quite simple. Upper consorts were seen once a month. Middle and lower consorts received exams every 3 months. Even with this schedule, seeing everyone was a challenge. But if Liu Human was ordered to do it, he would. It had been 9 days since their last visit to the rear palace. 9 days passed for Maomao, quite normally except for the 2 court ladies who constantly watched her. The only trouble was that all her letters were examined. Fortunately, none came directly from Jinshi. They usually arrived in Gaoshan's name. She noticed Basin was back at work, though it did not particularly matter to her. His recovery seemed unusually quick, given how severe his wounds had been. Perhaps he was simply built differently. She hoped to one day test his powers of recovery against those of other people. A letter arrived from Seizan, letting her know the apothecary shop was doing well. He also complained that Kokyu was obnoxious. Yes, Maomao knew he could be obnoxiously cheerful, but Seizan would just have to live with it. Sometimes, pictures of Maomao the cat were mixed in with the letters. These pictures came from Chuyu instead of a personal seal. Maomao's toe beans were pressed onto the pictures in scarlet ink. The scratches on the pictures suggested she signed them under duress. Yao studied one picture of the cat particularly hard in the name of careful inspection. At length, she handed it regretfully back to Maomao. Later, Nen asked if Maomao wouldn't give her the cat painting. Maomao suspected it would then make its way to Yao. Yao and Nen seemed to think the pale woman was just a code name. It seemed to bother Nen, but Yao didn't think much of it, so Nen didn't press the matter further. The pale woman Maomao was almost certain it was the same person she knew as the White Lady, although she could not be absolutely sure. If it was not. She thought of the painter she had saved from food poisoning. His house had a painting of a beautiful woman with white hair and red eyes. He claimed to have seen her in the western reaches. Could that be the woman Eileen was referring to? Eileen herself hailed from Sheo, but why the riddle then? No, it had to be the White Lady, Maomao thought, shaking her head. The woman in the painting still wouldn't leave her mind, though. Could there be some sort of connection? Her question would be answered the very next day when they saw Eileen again. There were not quite 100 women in the rear palace with the rank of consort. Rumors frequently spread whenever an important consort left the rear palace. However, lower-ranking consorts often departed without much notice. Sometimes they were given in marriage to officials who deserved them. Other times they returned to their families, never having been visited by the emperor. Many of the palace women laughed at the idea of leaving the rear palace, but it didn't bother Maomao much. Maomao, Yao and Nen were with Liu Humen and the quack doctor, visiting the different sections of the rear palace. This was the second time they had performed this duty. They found the room indicated by their tag, the one with the flower and number. It belonged to a lower consort, but a black cloth covered the door. This was a sign of loss, meaning the owner of the chamber had died. Yao asked, "Do you suppose she was ill?" But this was one of the women Maomao's father had seen on their last visit, and he hadn't noticed anything. This implied something. Suicide, I suspect, Maomao said. It wasn't unusual. As long as the death was obviously self-inflicted with no signs of foul play, the rear palace hardly batted an eye. It was not an everyday occurrence, but it was nothing to get excited over. The ladies in the rear palace represented every different kind of flower, but most of them arrived convinced of their own beauty. Many had a very high regard for themselves, and more than a few were driven to despair by the difference between their expectations of the rear palace and the reality. The group heard some ladies chattering. They said she was addicted to alcohol. They were so caught up in their gossip that they did not notice the group of medical personnel standing nearby. When they saw the white overcoats, they quickly returned to their places. It really is a graveyard of women, Maomao thought. Or rather, it is a battlefield. Those who were defeated in the competition had no choice but to disappear. In a way, the maids were freer than the consorts. They worked very hard, almost like dogs, but their service had a fixed term. If they could endure it long enough, they would eventually leave the palace walls. Today they planned to visit the lower consort's chambers, and then finally go to Eileen's residence. They had not originally planned to visit her since they had seen her on their last visit. However, the lady herself had made a personal request to change the plan. Was she unwell, or was there something else she wished to know? First, they arrived at the room of a lower consort. A camellia symbol was on the door. "There are no particular problems," said the consort. She reeked of perfume and one of her ladies was fanning her. The rich smell drifted toward them, and Maomao wanted to wrinkle her nose. It was summer, but surprisingly the room was closed tightly, trapping the scent. It was unfortunate for her. She possessed His Majesty's preferred body type. She was voluptuous even under her robe. The collar of the robe was carefully closed. Her face looked somewhat aggressive, but she seemed intelligent. She fit well within the interests of their energetic emperor. Maomao stole a glance at the quack's notebook. The book lay open to a page listing the name of the fragrant concubine. It also included notes about illnesses she had experienced and how many times His Majesty had visited her. I was correct. She is exactly his type. Only one visit was recorded.